Evolutionary Hardcore 2.0, episode 15. Today we're going to be talking about a great brand, Para Pharma. We're going to talk about the quality and reliability, and we're going to review their products. We're going to kind of go through, talk about what they've got, talk about some of our favorite products that they have. And it's a really, really cool company. I really like what they bring to the table. They've been around for over a dozen years as of this podcast. So they've been around a long time. And that's a long time for a source. I know Mobster will touch on that. All in all, they've got 45 products and 30 different active pharmaceutical ingredients. So they are a pretty large brand and they know what they're doing. So another thing I like about them is on their website, they've got lab tests on their products. And these are Janoschick. These are legitimate lab tests that they've done. They are recent. A lot of them were done in the past 4 or 5 months on their products. So you know that when you buy something off their website, that you are actually buying what you order. And that's important. We have a lot of anxiety, steroid anxiety, with people who are using steroids over the years. I've had this, Mobster have had this, where we've run something and we've been like, you know what? It just doesn't feel right. Something is off here. But with these guys, Para Pharma, you know that when you order Anavar, you're getting Anavar. You know when you're ordering Primobolan, you're getting Primobolan. These are very highly faked types of anabolic steroids. And it's very important that you trust who you're buying your products from. Otherwise, you'll end up getting ripped off and you'll end up wasting your money for nothing. And you can harm yourself as well. So we want to make sure that we're always using legitimate gear. And Para Pharma brings it to the table. So they have really, really nice products here. And they have you covered from top to bottom, from whatever you want, on cycle, ancillaries, post cycle. They got you covered. And we're going to go over all their products here in a minute and tell you about each one that they have. It's a really, really an impressive list.
I'll jump in here, Steve, while you hesitate. One of the things Steve touched upon just now is when we talk about the length of time that a company's been around as being important. Why is that? It's quite simple, really. The market that we're talking about here, the steroid market, the performance enhancement drug market, is stupidly volatile, especially for new companies. They come and go. Steve and I touched this on the previous podcast. I've known companies that have lasted less than a year, Steve. Labs that have lasted 6 months to a year. It's just that crazy. They've made mistakes. They've put too much money into one thing or another, and that's when they're legit. When they're not legit, they start off amazing. The first products that come out are absolutely stupendous. People go crazy over it, and then within 6 months, they're cutting corners. They're trying to make an extra buck here and an extra buck there because they realize there's more profit to be made. And then by the end of the year, the end of the time that the company comes and drops off, because everybody really, like Steve said, there's zero in there. And that's just how bad the market can be. So for any company, but specifically Para Pharma today, to last over a decade in this market is a sign that they're doing something right. So that is 1,001%, Steve. You can't argue with it. It's a given. You go, right, that's number one. Number two is, like I said, what do? We do research for these shows, guys. It might not always sound like it. Sometimes we do a bit of back and forth, but we do. So we go and look at companies. We go and see what they're doing. We go and look at their products. Obviously, we know we want to say we talk to members that have tried products. We talk to suppliers. So what do? We go and look at, and for example, like Steve says, I've gone and looked at. And one of the things that sometimes happens, and we're going to talk about this in a future podcast, when it comes to and I'm a big fan of this, Steve, the certificates of analysis, the lab tests. Well, I want to see dates that are relevant. I've seen companies, and we're going to discuss this in a future podcast, where the lab tests are old, a couple of years old, 2 years old, whatever. I want to see up-to-date lab tests. I would say 90% of the lab tests that I looked on here, we've got two things that are standing out for me, Steve. They're within a few months. And what was really surprising, and this is another thing that I want to touch on when it comes to product test is some of their products were overdosed. Not a huge amount. We're not talking hundreds of milligrams here, guys, but as often as not, it was 101%, 102%, a little tiny bit over. You're not getting 250 when you only wanted 200, guys, but you're getting 202, 203. That means they're not cutting corners. They're giving you as close as they possibly can, exactly what you asked for. Even a tiny bit under is fine, guys, if it's 198 instead of 200. But I was surprised, Steve. I didn't look at every single test. They're all on one page, guys, so you could have if you want to. But I would say that 2/3 that caught my eye were ever so slightly overdosed. That to me is a super, super positive sign. And like Steve says, when you're taking a product from Para Pharma, what do you want? Whether it's a simple oral or a stack or something that's a blend, if you are an experienced user, you will know how you're supposed to feel. Whether it's an Anavar pump, whether it's bloated as some users are on Anadrol, whether it's that feel good that you get from Dynabol, you will know how you feel. You will know how quickly you get a pump in the gym with Dynabol, for example. So you want to know when you're taking products, like the kind of products you get with Para Pharma, that you have that sensation. And that's without you yourself doing a drug test or analyzing the product. So this is the kind of stuff that we're after. And then, like I said already, we're going to talk about reviews, the way that works, and all those kind of fun things as well, Steve. So yeah, I'm very excited. And I just liked, I obviously, again, pre-show research. I went and checked the Para Pharma site myself. I went and checked one of their authorized suppliers. I like how their products look. Look, guys, it's a silly example, and I mentioned it to Steve in the pre-show. If you're going to spend big bucks, and I mean big bucks, tens of thousands of pounds, tens of thousands of dollars, just on labels for your product, whether it's lot numbers, whether it's holograms, whether it's 3D printing, all that kind of stuff. That is a really, really good sign. Just today, as we're recording this podcast, there was a photograph shared by a member of another product that a gym buddy gave to him. It had no graphics, no label, no hologram. It was in a black sachet with some sort of white printing on top, Steve. And the sachet was about the nicest thing about it, seriously. And again, no 3D, no lot number, no nothing. This is on my buddy's and it says it. Everybody that's replied is laughing. It's a joke. For a company to spend tens of thousands of dollars just on labels and sachets and vials and holograms and all that kind of hard to print stuff, hard to produce stuff is a great sign in and of itself that they're serious about what they're doing, that they're sticking around and they want their product to look and feel and be professional. And Para Pharma's got that down pat. I like how they look, Steve. Back to you.
Yeah, so let's get into the fun part. Let's kind of go over all their products that they have and talk a little bit about the ones that we like. So Accutane 20, you do this in the ABC order. Accutane 20 is what they have now. This one is for those of you who suffer from acne. And acne is a nasty, nasty condition. And I feel for people who have this issue. I've never really had this issue. I mean, I had zits when I was a teenager, but I've never had acne issues. But when you use anabolic steroids and the changes of the hormones, both when you go on cycle and then when you come off, can really flare up the acne. So they're selling Accutane 20. That's great for those of you who have acne issues. That can help resolve that one. So next one, ABC order here, Anadrol 50. Now, Anadrol A-bombs. This is one of my favorite oral steroids out there, and I really like it. So each tab comes in 50 milligrams. You can always cut the tab in half if you want to go 25, but any dose from 25 to 50 is plenty on this stuff. And this Para Pharma Anadrol is absolute fire. So you can run this stuff 4 to 5 weeks, Mobster, and really transform your physique. The thing I like about Anadrol is not only do you get size on it, but you also get hardness because it is a DHT derivative. Although it does have binding properties to estrogen receptors in the body, it is basically a great steroid. If you want something to just take for 4 or 5 weeks, you can run it solo and get great results. You don't have to stack a bunch of steroids with Anadrol. So it's one of my favorites, Mobster, for sure. What do you got? What are the next ones you want to talk about?
Oh, I'll tell you what stands out for me, Steve. And again, like I said, I did some pre-show research, so I got to look at their products. I am, as many listeners will know, and forum members will know, a huge fan of antivirals and oral, and my response to it, and what I get from it, and so on and so forth. Right. So the recommended daily dosage, listeners, as always, seems to be optimal around the 50 milligram. And I like the simple fact that Para Pharma produced an actual 50 milligram tablet. Real simple, real straightforward. Like Steve said, if you want to split that up, you can cut it. I bite one in half, Steve. I'm old school. That's not a problem, guys. But you can buy pill cutters, etc. But I like the simple fact that they've gone ahead and produced an Anavar 50. I would say 99% of the companies that we look at and we deal with, you get 10s, which they also do, and you get 25. But no, Para Pharma's gone ahead and produced a 50 for you. So, guys, they've kind of saved you all that trouble. Like Steve says, as I scroll down the list here, Steve, there's a bunch of stuff that stands out for me. Boldo 300, Bolderon, obviously. So guys, 300 for me is again that sweet spot. You get companies that do 250, you get sometimes 400 and whatever else. But what is the amount that most of us end up taking when we're doing it? Why are companies? I think, you know what, Steve, the companies have been copying from way back in the day when the products were originally produced, and you don't have to go to the crazy amounts, but you end up with the performance enhancing drug dosage. And here's what they've done. They said, this is what most users want. When they're using Bolderon, this is the amount they want. So that's what they put in the per mil in the vial state. They've literally just produced exactly the amount that they know most users are going to use, rather than copy the original pharmaceutical company dosaging, which was produced for a completely different reason and not for performance enhancement. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, so on the Boldenone, the Equipoise on this one, they've got different options for you. And I think it's really cool. They got the Boldenone 300, the Boldenone 500, and then they got a Boldenone in testosterone mix 400. So this kind of cuts down on you having to mix them yourself. So you can just take them and they're already mixed for you. So they got you covered when it comes to Equipoise. I really, really like that. And the doses from Equipoise can range from 300 to 500. So if you do want to go the lower route, if you're stacking it with a couple different things, you could choose the Boldenone 300. If you want to run the Equipoise a little higher, run it solo or run it with an oral or run it with some testosterone, you get the Boldenone 500. Boom, you're covered on that one. In 1 cc is 500 milligrams. So you just inject it once a week, 1 cc once a week, and get 500 milligrams a week. That's awesome. And it's not that expensive. You can buy a vial, which will last you 10 weeks, taking 1 cc a week, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. That's a beautiful thing. I like to see that option. Now, Arimidex and Aromacin as well. Those are aromatase inhibitors. They have Arimidex and they have Aromacin 25, and those are really, really good. The Arimidex comes in 1 milligram, and the Aromacin comes in 25 milligram. So when it comes to estrogen, if you need an aromatase inhibitor on cycle, boom, they got you covered on that. So I really, really like that as well. So Mobster, take us do a couple of the C's. We got a Clomid and a Cut Stack 150. Why don't you talk about those?
Yeah, I talked about this in the pre-show when I said to Steve that I wanted to look at the Cut Stack 150 because a couple of companies, and Para Pharma, one of those companies, have started to produce products where they've done the work for you again. Right. So what happens, guys, is you decide you want to get cut, you want to get lean, you want to get in shape, and for forever, for many years, decades, Steve, people have had to go off and buy one product and buy another product and mix it themselves, as often as not in the same vial, in the same syringe, whatever, themselves. Companies have started to produce products for you with, again, the optimal amount of each product is being included in the vial, ready for you to inject, so that you don't have to do any work. You haven't got to go away and buy feed vials. In fact, arguably, Steve, they're saving you money. So Cut Stack 150 is testosterone propionate, drostanolone propionate, and trenbolone acetate. And again, all in one vial. All the work's been done for you guys. Now, obviously, make sure that you're out there killing it in the gym, killing it in the kitchen, taking some fasting tips from Steve, and this one's going to help you get into shape. Like I said already, Steve, the work has already been done for you. Something else I made a quick note of, Steve, while you were talking about the auxiliaries there. They do Aletrozole, which they call Femara 5. So they've already produced, again, they have, sorry, not already produced, they've got all of the ancillaries that you want. And this is a super easy, and I'm just looking, so I'm looking at one of their authorized suppliers here, Steve. All the products, all in one place, everything you could possibly need. There's other stuff out there. I want to touch on a couple more, Steve. For example, I made a previous show note here, long stack 300. So again, this is one of us. Why is it called long stack? Almost certainly, Steve, because it's going to run. It's got longer esters in, and we're looking at here. Long stack 300 is drostanolone in amphate, 100 milligrams, trenbolone in amphate, 100 milligrams, and testosterone in amphate, 100 milligrams. Guys, again, you're looking. We get asked about this, and I'm a big fan actually of this again, Steve, for one reason and one reason only. Why do I recommend longer esters? Purely and simply because I don't like pinning. I don't want to. I'm not pin happy, guys. I don't want to be jabbing myself daily or sometimes multiple times a day, Steve, if I'm using different products. So here's another one where not only have they put all the products into the vial that you're going to use for a longer running cycle, but they've made it so that you don't have to be jabbing every single bloody day, Steve. And I love that. I like something like this, which for me, I'm thinking twice a week, perfect for me. And again, never having used trenbolone before, this is actually optimal for me here, Steve, because if I did this twice a week, I'd only be using 200 milligrams of tren a week, along with the 200 milligrams of the others. That's perfect for me. So this is actually something that I would love to try in the future, I think. Or I would be looking in this particular example, because normally I train for Para Strength, as you know. This would be a muscle and hard muscle and lean muscle stack for me twice a week. 600 milligrams total, perfect for me, Steve. Would you give this one a try?
Yeah, it's a good one if you want to definitely have some good results. So yeah, between that, you got the cut stack option, and then you got the long stack option 300. So, and really the only difference between the two is the esters. One is a longer ester, one is a shorter ester. So this one is a longer ester. If you want to go with the other option, it's a shorter ester. So I would say 8 weeks or less. If you want to do like 6 to 8 weeks, then do the cut stack 150. If you want to go longer, then do the long stack 300. But I wouldn't go with the long stack 300 if you were inexperienced with tren. You want to go with the short stack if you are, and you keep the cycle a little short. So let's go over DECA, the DECA options. There's 3 different DECA options that Para Pharma has. You've got the Decan 300, it's called, and this is the long ester nandrolone. And then there's the Decan P150. This is the shorter ester of the phenylpropionate option. So the Decan, the shorter option, has 150 milligram per milliliter, so it's more pinning. If you don't mind more pinning and you want to get, maybe if you want to do a shorter cycle of DECA, of what we know as DECA, which is nandrolone, if you want to do a shorter cycle of that, 10 weeks or less. If you want to go maybe 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 14 weeks, and you go with the longer ester, Decan 300. And then they got you covered too, because they got the DECA and test together. It's called DECA Test 400. So they basically do the work for you on this one. They mix them together. So it's nandrolone, decanoate, and testosterone enanthate together to make 400 milligrams. So it's 200 milligrams of each in per cc. So if you do 1 cc a week, you're getting 200 and 200. If you do 2 cc's a week, which would be your best option on with this one, that's how I would run it. So you get 400 milligrams of DECA, 400 milligrams of the Test E. So you can definitely get good gains on that one. I would also recommend anytime you run nandrolone to run Proviron with it. And we're going to talk about Proviron in a few minutes because they do have a really good Proviron option. But the reason you want to run Proviron with a nandrolone always is to help balance that DHN and DHT in the body. And that will prevent the whole DECA-DIC worry that a lot of people seem to worry about. So that would definitely help with that. So, but this is a good option. Mobster DECA is a great option for bulking. If you want to bulk up, you can't go wrong using DECA. It's great for appetite. It's great for mood. It's great for bulk, getting mass and bulking up and getting stronger. And it's one of the all-time favorites of a lot of guys, especially in your age demographic. They really, really love DECA from back in the day. So you talking on DECA a little bit. Tell us what you like about Deca, and then talk about Dianabol, because you skipped over Dianabol, the D of Dianabol. That's one of your favorites,
I would
right?
just go to my favorites, Steve. I've just gone to the stuff that absolutely stands out and is catching my eye. Steve's talked about Deca, and I'm a big fan of it. I absolutely am a big fan of it, Steve. No doubt about it. I've talked about this multiple times, guys. I'll repeat it if you're a new listener. So back in the day when I kicked ass in competition on a regular basis in the strength competition, specifically the grip strength stuff that I was doing, my stack of all stacks was combination of Deca and Sustanon. And I knew it was an absolute given. This is what Steve touched on earlier when we said, when you like know how you feel. And I touched on that as well. Knowing how you feel on certain drugs, knowing the results you're going to get, right? This comes from experience of use, and there's always going to be individual response. But for me, Deca and Sustanon together was an absolute given. Those days I weighed 280, and I think I went 270 to 290 on one cycle and 280 to 300 on another cycle. And I would add somewhere between 5 and 10% to my top end strength, which was perfect for the competitions. I didn't actually have to be that big, but it was great. So what? But the strength was the thing for me. And it was like Steve said, because I would have been, I think, my absolute peak strength, all-time PBs, kicking ass in competition, would be my early to mid-40s, Steve. So that long ago. And again, this is where I was. This is what I was doing. I absolutely loved it. Now, Dynabol. Dynabol, breakfast of champion, guys. It is absolutely, absolutely. I would say this is probably the first steroid that 99% of users have ever used, Steve. I mean, I mean, you can literally buy a T-shirt saying "Breakfast of Champions." No exaggeration, guys. What has Steve's touched upon this in previous podcasts? You feel good on Debo. A lot of users, 80-90% of users. So that's number one. Number two, the Debo pump. It's actually kind of pleasant. I would say the Anavar pump, Steve, can be uncomfortable, but again, great for strength. But Debo pump is kind of pleasant. I get a little bit of water retention on. It is a watery drug. You can control that with an AI, of course, and obviously keep your diet and your fluid intake on point. But for me, it means I get swelling around the joints, so my bench press goes up, my press goes up, even my squat goes up because I have that swelling around the top of the quad and the hamstring at the bottom. I absolutely love it. Para Pharma do a great product here. 20 milligrams, on point. Price is lovely. I'm looking at the prices right now, Steve. And again, a Debo for me would be, honestly, if you go back in the day for the original blues, and even now, I would probably say 60-70% of our listeners, the Dynabol's the first drug. They might switch on to something else straight away, but it's the first drug. And guys, here's a thing that you sometimes need to remember when it comes to your first cycle, and especially if you're talking about Dynabol your first cycle. It is a given. It might be slightly bro science, but I'd actually say it's probably true, Steve. It's one of those bro science things which is real, and that is your first cycle is your best cycle. So, guys, Para Pharma Dynabol, first cycle, best gains, real short and sweet. If I was using a Para Pharma product, Steve, I would probably go 2 pills. I might go 3 pills. So that would be 60 milligrams. My sweet spot for me is between 30 and 50. So that would be 2 pills a day. But again, remember what I said earlier on about products being slightly overdosed? Brilliant, Steve. Honestly, absolutely fine. What about you for first cycle gains on Dynabol?
Yeah, and the cool thing about Para Pharma too is that they have not only the pills, the tabs that are 20 milligrams each that you can cut very easily. They also have an injectable Dynabol 100. So with that one, each cc is 100 milligrams. So what you can do is just take a half a cc, and that's 50 milligrams. You take a quarter of a cc, that's 25 milligrams. So that makes it a lot easier. A lot of people just prefer to inject, so they'll do it that way. But so, you know, if you want to just like, you know, do it that way, you can do it that way or not. So Dynabol, you know, hey, it was my first oral steroid I ever ran. The strength incredible right off the bat. So a lot of people like Dynabol for that reason. It kicks in really fast. Within days, you'll notice a change. You'll be doing 1 or 2 reps more doing the same weight. So it kicks in really quick, and a lot of people love it for that reason. So next one, we talk about Masteron. And the nice thing about Para Pharma is they got you covered on Masteron no matter what your goals are, if you're competing or et cetera, et cetera. So Again, they've got the Masteron Enanthate 200. So it's 200 milligrams per milliliter. And they have the Masteron Propionate 100 milligram per milliliter. So again, shorter cycles, you want to usually go with the propionate. That's common sense. Longer cycles, you want to go with the enanthate. If you're competing, a lot of competitors, they like to go with a shorter ester. They like to keep things flexible. Or if you want to finish your cycle off, you could add in Masteron. Now, I have a story on Masteron, Mobster. I was on Masteron before. It was my first time using Masteron. I was running about 400, 500 milligrams a week. And I was stacking it with a couple other things. I think a little testosterone, maybe some tren. So I went to my massage therapist, and, I had been seeing her for a couple months, here and there. So she was massaging me, and basically she's like, she's basically said that I've never massaged someone with hard muscles as you. And that's the Masteron right there. That's what Masteron does. It makes your muscles really, really hard. It got to the point where it felt like I was sleeping on rocks, because that's how hard it makes your muscles. So with Masteron, I always recommend you be lower than 11 or 12% body fat. Ideally, even less than that. Under 10% would be ideal. Because look, and let's be frank about this. You're not going to see a hard muscle that's covered up by fat or covered up by water. So you want to make sure your diet is on point. You want to make sure you're lean, and that's when the Masteron really shines. So it would be a shame for you to use this Para Pharma Masteron and be, 20% body fat, and then we're not going to be able to see those abs, those hard abs that Masteron will give you. We're not going to be able to see that vascularity that Masteron gives you. So you want to be as lean as possible before you use a Masteron. If you're not lean, then you might want to pick something else from the Para Pharma list. All right, Mobster. So what's the next one we're going to talk about? Primo looks like it's next on the list.
Yeah, I like the fact that they've got two options, Steve. Again, remember what I said earlier on, guys, about how companies of old would copy the dosing that the pharmaceutical company that originally developed a drug for medical reasons did, and that's never changed, right? So there's tell you a little bit about that very, very quickly. Okay, so there's a reason why certain products for medical reasons, Steve, weren't dosed crazy high the way that we like to go. Occasionally, a small percentage of our listeners, a small percentage of users, like to go 400, 500 milligrams. And this is because they've got it in the head, they're going to blow up, this is going to work for them in the gym, etc., etc. So I've argued both ways, right? One way is, listen, pharmaceutical company could have done that, and they're going to charge you double, so they're not losing any money. They make the same amount of money that they did before, but they didn't do it because, medically speaking, the users were having problems with discomfort, what we call post-injection pain. And you don't want that when someone's already struggling with medical issues. So they don't go crazy high. Equally, as I said a few minutes ago, performance-enhancing drug use is different than medical use. Steve's touched on this. You go back to the original drug dosage for certain products. And Anavar is a great example, Steve. 1, 2, 3 milligrams. Not 10, not 15, not 20, not 25, not 50, like we use in the gym. 1 or 2 or 3 milligrams for medical reason. In fact, some of the early performance-enhancing drug use was at the very, very low dosage. And some users, genetically gifted, got some amazing responses from super crazy low dosages. But as we were talking about earlier again, performance-enhancing drug use is what's the optimal amount? And the optimal amount, like I said, for Anavar, is 50 milligrams. So as an example, companies like Para Pharma produce products as it's going to be used. And they've done that with Primo in 100 milligram and in 200 milligram. I'm looking at some of the tests here, Steve. Let me have a quick scroll down here. I'm gonna find you, Primo, while we're talking. Okay, here's a great example, right? So they're 200, Primo 200, lab test came in at 208.68, I believe I'm looking at here, Steve. So again, like I said to you guys, slightly overdosed, which is perfect. Underdosed is fine, a little bit underdosed. But when you've got crazy, crazy variation, I want the product to be slightly overdosed. You, the listener, want the product to be slightly either dead on or slightly overdosed for the reasons of the reasons why we're using it, for going in the gym, smashing the granny at the weights. getting the responses that we want to get. We want to, and here's the thing, Steve, how does this work? If I'm buying something in the supermarket, and it's a marketing thing as often as not, getting something for free, getting more for free, or getting more for the same price that I previously paid for less is always seen as a good thing. So when it comes to performance enhancing drugs, it's no different. And Para Pharma is giving you more than you would expect to get, only a little bit more, guys, not crazy amounts. Nothing that's going to give you any problems, but a little bit more. So it's potent, which means it's going to do exactly the job that you want it to do. If everything else is on point, they've got you covered. And again, like I said, Steve, with ever so slightly more than you'd expect to get. So you want a potent, you want that kick, you want it to be there in your body doing exactly what you want it to do. I mean, that's just a great example right there, Steve. Here's another one, the Primo 100, Steve. 114 measured on the drug test. That's actually a little bit more than I was expecting, Steve. So there's another example of what I'm saying about being slightly overdosed. This is actually a little bit more than slightly, only fractionally. It's exactly the sort of thing that you want to see, guys. How often are you going to see underdosed or weak products, or like I said earlier on, products that are great to begin with, and then they fall off the cliff in terms of quality, potency, and then the company disappears, or they just start getting really, really bad reviews all the time. You don't get to be around like Para Pharma for a decade with products like this, with the options that they're giving you, with the dosages exactly like a user's going to use, and here in a drug test, in the actual tested product, being overdosed, potent as hell, Steve. That's exactly what we want.
Yes, sir. And Primobolan, quick story with Primobolan is I've run Primobolan before, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and it's been fake Primobolan. So it's very, very frustrating when you spend all that money on Primobolan, which is not a cheap steroid, and it ends up being fake. So with Para Pharma, you're getting the legitimate stuff, as Mobster just pointed out, lab tested. Very, very, very important. Proviron, I talked about Proviron earlier. I'll talk about it again. They have tablets, 25 milligrams per tablet. It's affordable. You can run Proviron on any cycle, and it will benefit that cycle. It will help with hardening. It will help with DHT benefits. It'll help bind to SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. So it will make everything in your cycle that much more potent. So it's a small investment to get Proviron, but that small investment can actually save you money because it can make the other steroids more effective. So you can run less of those other steroids and save your gear for future cycles and extend the cycle if you needed to. So Proviron has a lot of different benefits, and it's a very mild steroid. Even though it's a DHT derivative, you won't get a lot of the negative DHT side effects on it. It's truly one of the most incredible inventions ever, I would put it that way, because of that. So where else can you find a DHT derivative that doesn't crush your hair or enlarge your prostate or any of the negative effects of DHT? Well, Proviron is one of them. So just brilliant the way they put Proviron together. Next, I want to talk about Superdrol 10. Now, Superdrol is not mild at all. Superdrol is one of those steroids that if you run 10 milligrams, then you increase the dose to 20 milligrams, you will feel it, and you will feel it quick. And if you increase it another 10 milligrams, you will feel it a lot more. And if you go up to 40 milligrams a day, you'll feel like death on it. So Superdrol is not one that you want to take lightly at all. It's very toxic. It's very rough on the liver. It's very rough on all your organs. But it's one of those that you can run for like 2 weeks and literally gain a tremendous amount of strength. So let's say you're at a plateau and you can't break that plateau. You could literally go on Superdrol for like 2 weeks, and you will not only blow your plateau, you will be doing weight that you can never imagine. It's such a strong steroid, but it's nasty. I'm not sure I'll ever run this again. I don't think I will. I don't like the way it makes me feel. It makes me fatigued. But man, when you walk into that gym, you are an absolute beast. So it just depends on what you're willing to tolerate. and what you're interested in doing. But do not run Superdrol for a long period of time. I would not run it longer than even like 3 or 4 weeks. It's just too toxic in the body, so it's not made for that. You want to run it a much shorter amount of time. All right, Mobster, what's
I'm
next?
gonna jump in my other favorite, Steve, and I've touched on it earlier on, guys. Sustanon, right? So they do a Sust 350. Steve, it should be Sust 400. I've just run the numbers, man. This is probably the most overdosed product that they produce. Guys, Para Pharma, if you're listening, you need to cut back. You're killing the profits here, guys. Honestly, seriously, guys, absolutely. Again, and I've said again, one of my favorite steroids for injectables. I've probably got 4. Let me think off the top of my head, Steve. I think it's going to be all right. Anavar, Dynabol. It's my 2 favorite orals, Sustanon and Deca, are my 2 favorite injectables, guys. So listen, there's Sustanon 350. I'm looking at the numbers, Steve, and I'm trying to do my feeble brain doing the calculations. Check this out. So it's called 350, but it's about 380 milligrams, 390 milligrams total, Steve, in the test. 232 milligrams of test enanthate, 113 milligrams of test cypionate, and 58 milligrams of test propionate. That's more than 350 milligrams, guys. Seriously, this one, honestly, guys, this is the Mobster's bargain is to buy this Sustanon. Get their Sustanon 350, stock up before they realize that they're giving you something for nothing. If you don't need 400 milligrams or close to 400 milligrams, just use a fraction less per mil, or just slightly under a mil, guys, and you'll get it back to the 350. But again, why? Because as I said, I blew up like a motherfucker. I knew exactly where my strength was. Do you know what the biggest problem, Steve, doing that 20 pounds? I literally walking up and down stairs in my house. I was a monster in the gym in those days. And again, one of my favorite things, I've talked about this story before, I'll say it again. Right, so I'm actually doing something like this right now, but not funny enough with an injectable, where back in the day, I would always add off cycle to on cycle. The difference was 20 kilograms on my bench press. And my best ever bench in those days, with no injectables, no rules, no nothing, raw, off cycle was 170 kilos, 350, 360 pounds, something like that. My on cycle absolute best was 190 kilos, 418 pounds. So 20 kilogram difference, 44-pound difference. That's like having another half plate on each side, guys. And I knew exactly where it was. I think I would have done 200 kilos on here, Steve, because it's a slightly overdose. Trust me, this is a rubber stamp Mobster approved product because it's overdosed, guys, like close to 400 milligrams, not 350. It is absolute. It's gold. If Tren is gold, this is gold. I mean, the Tren fans, and we're going to get the Tren in a minute, is the one that people talk about gold. This is Mobster gold because it's got way too much, not crazy amounts in there, but a little bit too much, guys. So I think I would have absolutely killed 200 kilos on this. That's 4.5 plates aside, guys. That would have been crazy. Let's talk about trends, Steve.
Yeah, so I have a lot of stories when it comes to trend for sure. And they have different trend options. They have actually 3 different trend options. They have a trend mix 350, and they have the trend acetate and trend enanthate. So let's first talk about the trend mix 350 and what it's all about. So this is made up of 100 milligrams of trenbolone enanthate and 250 milligrams of testosterone enanthate. So if you're basically getting a 2.5 to 1 ratio of testosterone to trenbolone. So if you're one of those people who reacts really well to testosterone, this could work really good for you in a bulking or in a strength stack. So I'm not sure, though, about those of you who are very sensitive to estrogen. This might not be a good one for you, especially if you're going to run 2 cc's a week. Then you're talking about you're getting 500 milligrams of testosterone enanthate and 200 milligrams of trenbolone enanthate. So that's a lot of estrogenic effects and a lot of androgenic effects. So, but I'll tell you what, libido-wise, your libido is going to be crazy on this stack. So if you want to basically, you're going to be so crazy that you're going to basically Yeah, this isn't one to run. I wouldn't run this if you're like in a relationship. This is one to run when you're single because you're gonna want to bang everything on this stack. So that's one of the downsides of the stack, I think. But if you like this type of mix, then go with it. If you don't, then they have two great trend options that are just trenbolone. The trenbolone acetate, which is 100 milligram a milliliter. They have the trenbolone enanthate, which is 200 milligram a milliliter. So either one is a really, really good option. So I'll tell you, I'll put it this way when it comes to trend overall, every relationship I've been in where I've run trend, I've ruined that relationship. So that's why that's why trend is a relationship killer. But trend overall, in all seriousness, it is the most hardcore anabolic steroid you can run. And for that reason, I like to stack a mild steroid with it. I don't like to stack a hardcore steroid with it. So one of the steroids that I actually like to stack with it is also on the list, and that's Turinabol 20 and T-Bol. So T-Bol is a very mild steroid. It's a DHT derivative. It binds to SHBG, just like Proviron. It's very mild, like Proviron, but it gives you just that little bit of a push, that little anabolic push to really stack well with trend without increasing the side effects. So you'll get really, really good results stacking those two together. Or I'll stack the Trenbolone with Anavar, which we talked about earlier in the podcast, and they have really, really good Anavar as well. So those are two options with you. With Trenbolone dosing, anywhere from 200 to 400, 250, 300 is like the sweet spot. If you run anything above that, you're going to start getting side effects. And then with the T-Bol, it comes in 20 milligram per pill. So anywhere from 20 to 40 milligrams would be a really, really good option for you. So I really like that stack. You could do the Trenbolone acetate with T-Bol and just do 6 weeks, and you'll have tremendous results across the board. I mean, you'll get huge, you'll get stronger, you can lean up on it. It just depends on how you react to trend, but really you'll get really, really good results on it, and you'll blow away any cycle that you could possibly imagine. You don't have to do much. You can literally just do 250 milligrams of trend and 20 milligrams a day of T-Bol, and it would blow away just about any cycle out there. And your side effects will be manageable. I'm not saying they're going to be great, but they'll be manageable.
Yeah. Let me jump back in here for a second here, guys. So trend, not used it. So hand on heart, you get the real deal when we're talking on this podcast. We don't bullshit you or whatever. But how many listeners, and especially I'm thinking members of the forums that listen to this podcast, love the trend, Steve. Absolutely love the trend. So here's one of those pieces of advice, right? I think number one, and Steve touched on this at the beginning of the podcast, not for a first timer. Why do we say that, guys? Because we want you to know how to manage side effects. We want you to know how you can respond. And again, that's the reason why so many of them, and I said this earlier on, Steve, go on Dynabols their first cycle, certainly back in the day, and even now, super common. The first, you go out there with a low dose, you see how you feel, and you go down the gym, and suddenly the weight's piling up, like Steve says, the strength's going for the roof, and that's just on your first cycle of Dynabol. Trend is one of those, if you can handle it, if you respond well, especially if you're already kind of lean. I never use trend if I was fat, absolutely not. And I know a bunch of strength athletes, purely and simply because the side effects, I think, are exaggerated. They're made worse when you're holding too much body fat. So it certainly suits the competitive athlete. Made a huge difference when trend kind of came on the scene in the late 80s and 90s. You could see the difference in physiques. You saw the difference when drugs first appeared on the scene in the late 50s and 60s and started to be used by athletes. You saw the difference trend made to physiques when it came in the 80s, 90s, and especially in 2000s when you just saw the difference right there on the stage and you knew that what they were doing and how they were producing these physiques. So if you do respond, it's absolutely amazing. So again, check this out, Steve. The Trenbo, which is a trend enanthate, 200. The test came out at 225 milligrams. So they're giving this stuff away, Steve. They're giving you bonus trend, guys. Not just a couple of milligrams over, 25 milligrams over. You're getting something for nothing here, guys. Trust me. This is another, I mean, again, not used trend. Hand on heart, not used trend. But if I was a trend fan, I'd be all over this like a rash, Steve, 100%. Let me have another look. This is a super common drug. a load of you listeners would have used this or will be thinking about using it, and that's Winstrol. Now, hand on heart again, tell you the stuff that we always tell you, right? If you suffer with male pattern baldness, male or female, you might not want to use Winstrol. Hell on the hairline. You also, especially if you're super lean, and Winstrol's a great drug for that anyway, that's when I also think users going to go to problems, what we talk about, dry joints, creaking joints, that sensation of that dryness, the aching around the joint, that Winstrol can sometimes happen. However, we've talked about, it's another podcast, a little bit of fish oil, a little bit in your diet, certainly some sort of joint products going to help that kind of stuff. And again, as I say, diet dependent and also just how lean you are. But again, a great drug for leaning people out. So for me, this would be at the end of a cutting cycle, Steve, certainly perhaps in a competitive cycle, but getting stage ready, getting ready for a model shoot or something like that. Options here, they do a 50 milligrams per mil injectable, an oral 10 and an oral 50. So again, they've got you covered with the dosages. Guys, as I said earlier on, it is just one of those tips that we talk about in this podcast. You can buy pill cutters on eBay, Amazon, bunch of medical sites that are sold direct to the public. Easy peasy if you don't want to do it. I'm old school. I just take that tablet and bite them off. I'm not worried about a few milligrams either way, guys. It's easy peasy. It's on my desk. It does the job. It does what it's supposed to do. Have you tried run Winstrol, Steve? Because I think you might have done compared to myself. What was it like for you?
Yeah, Winstrol, definitely run Winstrol. So Winstrol, for me, head hair, my side effects with Winstrol, head hair loss, was definitely an issue with it. And I'm not prone to head hair loss. So with Winstrol, a lot of people come to me, a lot of my clients, and they're like, Steve, I want to run Winstrol. How do I prevent head hair loss? And I say, look, you're not going to. If someone like me, who's not even prone to head hair loss, and I have a full head of hair in my 40s, if I'm even losing head hair on the Winstrol, what happens if you're prone to head hair loss? What do you think is going to happen? So with Winstrol, if your hair is very important to you, you may want to avoid it. But Winstrol is a great steroid for dry. I mean, absolutely getting dry. And I would say, just like with Masteron, you want to be a low body fat, because what's the point of being 20% body fat and taking something like Winstrol? It does not make sense. So that's the way I would want to run Winstrol. I'd start out maybe 25 milligrams a day. You could up it to 50. A lot of the pros who, they don't care about their head hair. A lot of them are bald anyway, but a lot of pros will run the hell out of Winstrol, especially going into competition, because of its benefits when it comes to drying your body out and drying out your joints. So it's a wonderful steroid for that reason. I would say if you're competing, it's a definite must if you're competing. But if you're not competing, you may want to avoid it unless you're really looking for that dry look and you don't care about your head hair loss. So, those are different options. And yeah, they do have 3 different options. They have the oral 50, oral 10, and they have the injectable. So you can do that. If you wanted to go the injectable route, you could do injectable, but it's a real pain to inject it. So a lot of people just choose to drink the Winstrol instead. Now, testosterone, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of testosterone Mobster they have. The first one they have is one that many of you won't use, but it is cool that they sell, and that's suspension. And with suspension, the reason suspension is really cool is, let's say that you're a competitive athlete who gets tested. Suspension is just the testosterone in a suspension. It's water-based. It's the pure hormone. There's no esterification with it. And it's in and out of your system when you take it. So you take it right before your workout. You take it right before your game. You take it right before your competition, whatever. And if you're a tested athlete, it's going to be very hard for them to detect it on you if they call you in to get tested, because by the next day or two, there's going to be no trace of it in your body because there's no esterification to it. So if you're, like an athlete who is worried that they're gonna be busted for anabolic steroids, the suspension is the route you want to go. So that's really cool that they have it. So there's actually 4 additional testosterone options. 3 testosterones, and then the Sustanon 350, which Mobster you talked about. So with the testosterone, you've got testosterone cypionate 250, you have the testosterone enanthate 250, and you have testosterone propionate 100. So again, the cypionate and enanthate esters, they're about what, 10, 11, maybe 12-day half-life. So it's a longer ester. If you're running a longer cycle, a cycle, 8, 10, 12 weeks or more, or if you're doing self-TRT, something like that, you want to go with the longer esters. If you're doing a shorter cycle, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you can go with the testosterone propionate. It's in your system peaking much quicker, and it's out of your system much quicker when you stop. So those are your options when it comes to testosterone. Mobster, why don't you talk about testosterone a little bit and tell us a story about the first time you took testosterone and what happened?
I've never used testosterone, but I will tell you something, guys. I've never actually used straight testosterone. Yeah, my actual PED use is kind of limited to just a few. I think I've tried a few things that I didn't get on with. Halo's one of them, Steve. And funny enough, Para Pharma doesn't seem to sell it, so that's great as far as I'm concerned. Let me talk about that. Actually, when I come back to something that Steve's touched upon already, Testipionate. I mean, he said it was a 250. Why do I like this product? Bearing in mind, I've never used testosterone as it is. So at some point in the future, I'm sure, as an old motherfucker like I am, just a couple of years away from being 60 years of age, Steve, and you and I have touched upon this in other shows, I can see me at some point for quality of life, for wanting to get down the gym and still kill it, being an old motherfucker with my 60-year-old ass down the gym, benching 300 pounds. I can see me low dosing TRT. Right, you and I have touched upon this in previous shows. So what we talked about, we said if you do real genuine TRT through a proper doctor, not one of his life extension clinics that's just going to charge you hundreds of bucks a month for something you could get for a lot less. You go to the doctor, you get tested, you find your values are low. They're dropping off because you're an old bastard like me. So what happens? You get they put you on a prescription, and you go, okay, but it's either coming out of my insurance or it's coming out of my pocket, and it's costing me some bucks, Steve. So what do we talk about? We say companies like Para Pharma, and what do? They're producing a Testipionate 250, like we said. Steve, 500,000 per week, not 1 mil, 500,000 per week, just to keep me on the spot. $1 million a week for 3 weeks with a week off. The money that I'd be saving compared to going to a clinic. So honestly, Steve, I would probably go 500,000 a week. And guys, if the product's anything like the other products that I've mentioned to you earlier on, it's going to be slightly overdosed, Steve. So that's going to be perfect. I suspect for me, because I think I've got a decent affinity for certain drugs that I've used for the gym, I actually think I respond incredibly well to 125, 150 milligrams a week. We're not talking about sports TRT, guys, which is typically used by the young guys, 400 milligrams. We're not talking about something that a clinic would faff about with, because they're going to be doing different things for you. A proper clinic is looking for your health. It's looking for your quality of life. It's not looking for what you're going to get down the gym. So something that's slightly more potent. But in this example, the value, because I'm just looking at the price here, Steve, through one of their approved suppliers, what am I looking at here, Steve? It's going to be costing me like about $4, not even $4 a week, Steve, for a jab just to make me feel great in my 60s. And again, perfect, 500,000, not even $1 million a week. That's fantastic, Steve. I mean, just stuff like that. That's the sort of thing that appeals to me. A couple of other things here, guys, before we finish off. So they do a T3, they do a Clen 40 micrograms. What did we say at the beginning of this podcast? I'll repeat again. They have pretty much everything you want. That's number one. Number two, super professional. I've checked out the vials again while we've been doing this podcast. The holographic, the 3D printing, the lot numbers, all that kind of stuff. Even the labels on the sachets of their orals and their tablets, Steve, is on point. And the thing that I've mentioned a couple of times today, the fact of the matter is, I think without me double checking it to make 100% sure, I actually think 80% of their injectables are overdosed. I mean, my favorite one, as I mentioned earlier on, Steve, was the SARS 350, which was near as damn, it was 380, 390 milligrams. So that's honestly, the value for money you're getting across the board here with some of their products is amazing. And my Testipionate example will just be, as a great example, $4 a week, guys, for a single jab. That's what it works out to. I've done the maths. That is crazy. And that's with delivery from a supplier, domestic market, US market, Steve. That is, you find out what you'd be paying at a clinic for TRT versus that. What is it about the range as a whole, Steve, that you like before we finish off?
Yeah, and you know, like you said, they have everything you have. It's a one-stop shop. They also have HGH called Paratropin, and they sell that. They have ACG. They have Nolvadex. We talked about Clomid earlier. So you get your PCT, on-cycle ancillaries, post-cycle ancillaries. If you want to run HGH, they got you covered on that. So they have everything, and they're very quality. It's very quality products, and you know we highly vouch for them. So give them a shot, check them out, and again, like you know that you're getting what you're ordering. That's the nice thing about it, and that's good. That's good. Cycle security is important. We work so hard on cycle. How many times do we get in our car to go to the gym, and we're like, oh, I don't really feel like going to the gym, but we go anyway. You know, I had a bad day at work. I don't feel like going to the gym. Last night I didn't sleep well. I've got so much things to do. I don't have time to go to the gym, but you go anyway. We bust our ass. So we're on cycle. We're taking these PEDs to increase our performance. That's the whole reason we take these. So it's messed up to take something that's not what they say it is, or that's underdosed. And a lot of, Mobster went over the dosing. They're properly dosed 100%, 101%, 102%, 103%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other sources, they've done tests on this. We got blood work to show these people, they run this gear. It's 30% dose, 40% dose. So what's the other 60% that you're injecting?
Yeah.
What is it? Just oil? Like, what is it? So who knows what you're injecting? So it's very important to use a trusted brand. And Para Pharma, they got you covered. So we're really looking forward to having Para Pharma as a up and coming brand that's expanding. And they've been around a long time. They put in the man hours, and now they're really going to start expanding, and we'll see a lot for them. And also they usually have discounts. They have specials going. Like right now they have an Anavar special. And they also have a buy 5, get 1 free special. So every 5 you buy, you get 1 free. So again, that saves you money right there. So it's a good way to keep customers coming back and save their customers money. Guess what you can do with that money you saved? You can go to the grocery store and buy some quality groceries. So it's really, really good. So you got your cycle covered here for sure, Mobster. So give us your final thoughts, Mobster. Take us to the disclaimer. I thought it was a great show.
I'll tell you what, guys, and we're going to do this on another podcast, as we mentioned right at the beginning again. So what do you do when you're looking for a solid source producing professional products? You look sometimes at the product reviews. I'll give you an example, Steve. I can think of 1 or 2 of the biggest resuppliers. What do I mean by that? They distribute a bunch of other companies' products, and you can go down their list of their suppliers that they have on their website. And sometimes you'll come across products with 0 reviews, or that have 1 touchdown photograph. I looked at 1 Para Pharma product, Steve, and it had 9 reviews and 4 pictures just on the first page. In other words, customers like what they're getting. They're happy to send in these reviews of the products, touchdown photographs, and so on and so forth. That's the kind of stuff that we like. Again, guys, I'll use the supermarket analogy that I mentioned earlier on. You know something's good when a buddy or a pal, whatever, you're in the pub, Steve, you're online, you're talking on Facebook, whatever, you've got to try this, it's amazing. And I don't mean like something that you've seen in an advert on the TV, Steve, where it's 2 paid-for actors and actresses and they're sitting there saying, no, this is the real deal. When a buddy says to me, oh, I've tried that thing, that's the best thing I've ever had, mate, and you're going to get it at this price, go and get some now before it runs out, that's the stuff that makes you want to buy something. So the same thing applies to performance-enhancing drugs. So what was it? I said, I've finished off, Steve. Professional looking. They've put the work in. They've been around for over a decade. The reviews are good. The photographs of users are good. The feedback's good. They're over fucking dosed, for crying out loud. And the prices are on point. That's exactly the kind of stuff that we want from our performance enhancing drugs, from an approved source. from a company that's going to be selling to the listeners and selling to the members on our forums. That's exactly what we want all the time, every single day. It's what we want from every single approved source and every single, but you won't find that all the way across the board. And like I said, start off great, but fade off fast. That happens way, way, way too much. We've been around a long time. We've seen this multiple times. When a company's been around for a decade and more and has been able to kill it like they're killing it and is producing up-to-date COAs, the professional stuff that I've touched upon, and still getting great reviews, still knocking it out of the park, that's exactly the stuff that you want from a company. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It's our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcasts are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.